Welcome to AI Unveiled. I'm your guest host, Lak Ananth, the managing partner of N47. And with me, I'm pleased to have Igor Marinelli, co-founder, co-CEO of Tractian. So we're going to have a great time today talking about Igor, Tractian, certainly talk about AI, and hopefully we'll talk about some other interesting things along the way. So welcome, Igor.
Thanks for having me, Lak. Pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So we're going to pace ourselves a little bit, talk about different things along the way with AI kind of being in the center. But before we get there, let's start with a little bit about your background. And it looks like you started early with programming and thinking about building something. So share a little bit about your early days and how it led to Tractian.
Well, let's start there. My father was a machine operator for a paper mill for 35 years. I remember when he gave me well, you're going to think that I'm young, but he gave me a Windows 98, and it was just that squared computer. I unfortunately couldn't use MS-DOS, so I was sort of like born and raised in the Windows 98 era. And started coding there. And I think I was 10 years old when he granted me the computer with a lot of hard work, and I started coding PHP. I was very self-taught, doing a couple of things here and there. So I remember as well my profile at Upwork, or I don't recall the freelancing platform at that time, and Stack Overflow was just like, one of the top. I've always learned through these forums. YouTube, not so popular. It's just, you had to go and just do stuff. And the best way was building projects, and especially commercially building projects. So I've realized I had to advertise my programming skills. And I started talking with factories because the thing that I knew is the thing that my father knew. And until I got my first project, and I was 13 years old at that time, with a motorcycle manufacturing facility in Portugal. Had to open my company, tax ID, got emancipated from my dad. Had his help here and there. And it was at that time we were working back and forth with the customer on a lot of Skype and a lot of email as well. But mostly we were discussing the details of the project on Skype, and it was all related to inventory management system and how to keep track of spare parts in spare units.
Well, how did the Portuguese motorcycle manufacturer find you, or how did you find them, and how did they think that the 13-year-old could do what they wanted?
I found them. So I've started shipping out a bunch of emails. I guess there was not really a name at that time of cold calling. I mean, I didn't even know the word entrepreneurism or entrepreneurship or anything like that. But I was cold calling people, effectively trying to guess their first name and last name, and then I would try multiple times, like first dot last name, last name, or just the first letter of the name and then the last name. But in really trying to provide my services essentially on back-end development systems. I've created a website and on how it could help manufacturing at that time. I would say, as you start doing those approaches, you sort of understand when you have a reply and then what you need to tailor, and then you go on and on and on. But effectively, I was not selling a product. I was selling myself, right? I was selling a service. Obviously, they were unaware of my age. And I think, so that was a hard part. We know, I mean, literally, they would have, customers would have doubts when I would be at the Skype. So I would have to eventually also call my father so that he would do the negotiation and pricing and so on. So I try to get help here and there from adults at that time. Help me price this, help me negotiate this. And, incredibly, they accept it.
Very
And
good.
the whole thing was about $5,000 at that time, but it was a monstrous amount of money for me. And remember going to the bank and opening a savings account when you're 13. And then there were some restrictions that I could only operate myself until when I got 18 years old. So the whole
Yeah,
thing is just
yeah. Most people were setting up lemonade stands and selling cookies, and you were negotiating with a Portuguese motorcycle manufacturer.
yeah.
So that's good. So now let's start. I'm going to ask you to talk to us a little bit about the founding story of Traction or the inspiration behind Traction. But before that, maybe you could start with explaining like what Traction is today, and then we'll start getting into the beginnings of it.
Traction is effectively a maintenance management platform. We start out with the most fundamental aspect for our customers, which is anticipating their failures. So when we started the company, we've realized there were already a lot of automation for conveyor belts and production line and spitting out products. But there were very little technology for maintenance and reliability, meaning the machines that are powering up the line and the factory. So we started to get absolutely very focused on the act of maintaining an asset, and we've realized maintaining an asset equals revenue in majority of industries. If you maintain, you have more uptime, and you have more uptime, you produce, and if you produce, you sell, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the beginning of the company, we visited about 88 factories, really
Wow.
going on site and just going all across America. It was absolutely very hard to find a homogeneous problem to solve across different sectors. We've done a little bit of market study, just so that we don't get surprised. This industry was being dominated by legacy players. So we're talking
Yep.
100-year-old companies there, and they were the norm. Whichever factory you visit, they were there. So
Yep.
we didn't see enough presence of newer companies and startups in the field, which could pose a threat, right?
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
same time, it was exciting. Well, I got
Yep.
nobody seeing the problem that we're seeing. On the other hand, it was like, are we genius, or is there something wrong here in penetrating this market? So it's a little bit of both things where when you look about different sectors, pulp and paper, automotive and machinery, food and beverage,
Yep.
in order to identify a problem that is similar in those factories already is the first barrier. How do you
Yeah.
identify something similar across all manufacturing plants? And that took 1.5 years just to figure out that. What is omnious across those industries, so that we would have enough bandwidth and market size so that it was worth the effort to pursue this.
Certainly there was a little bit of recognition moment in 2022 about generative AI, and the word AI kind of became fashionable again. But when you started the company, were you thinking AI can do all these cool things, let me go apply it to a factory? Or was it like afterwards that you said, well, maybe AI could be useful here? How did that happen?
We were not using the word AI. And I remember using way more machine learning when we started the company, in neural networks, and explaining to the customer how neural networks worked. But effectively, the biggest challenge we have identified is, how do we tell this customer what is the mechanical problem or what is the electrical problem that their machine has? And thankfully, I have done a discipline in college called signal processing, where I
Yeah.
have learned Fourier and Fourier transform. And I have learned how images, they are, waves, and they are spectrum. And I have learned how Shazam
Hmm.
transforms a song into feeding a neural network to identify what song is playing. I had all that back knowledge. And when I was looking at those machines, I was just questioning more and more. Can we hear the sound? And then
Hmm.
understanding maybe the ultrasound, and then, maybe the vibration. And what is the pattern that we can decompose to identify a failure was the main technical challenge. And once you decompose that, you've realized, wait, hold on, industries are phenomenal, because this motor can be here at a paper mill or at a food mill, but it's still the same WAG, Siemens motor that can be decomposed into the same wave, even though the product's totally different, their mechanical behavior is the same. So with amplitude variations, meaning, the power that it's running, but that's the volume of the sound. Amplitude is the volume. So
Yeah.
the behavior was all read through machine learning and neural networks, essentially to tell the customer, your machine lacks lubrication. Fantastically, the mechanical engineering has been there for ages, and it is very definitive. It is very supervised. You can tell someone by looking at a wave of in a combination of data that they lack lubrication, or that their hydraulic pump has a misalignment, displacement, looseness. So that was just a phenomenal process of like challenging convention, and can we actually do it? Is it actually possible? Because the whole
Yep.
industry was manually calling OEM providers, manually analyzing this, calling the specialist, the guy. They always had the name for it, like, let me call the guy. And then the guy
Yeah.
would come in with all those different instruments and almost like measuring the heartbeat of the machine. And they had 30 plus years of experience and say, yep, it's the bearing inside this motor. We're like,
Yeah.
hold on, what are you doing there? Can we take that guy's head and transform it into an algorithm? And I guess very similarly to how you would also analyze X-ray today with AI. But our customers, they were first principles thinker. They were forcing us into delivering obvious value proposition, and forcing us out of the buzzword, even though we could use AI, Gen AI, whatever we were using to solve their problem. They were buying anticipating failures. They were
Yeah.
buying assertive diagnostics of machines.
Right. The picture that's forming in my head, Igor, is that there's AI in the middle. You didn't start out your company saying I'm going to do AI, but then AI was in the middle. But there's the problem of transforming a set of real world problems into an AI problem. And that's as much expertise, engineering, observation required there. So you transformed it into AI problem, and then AI gives you results. But then you have another set where you then have to transform that results into something that's valuable for the customer. So you are starting from the customer and working your way into these three pieces essentially. And AI is a
Yeah.
component of how you did it. And of course, you started with machine learning, but then you started with a very large problem set, a large problem domain, and then you kind of am I understanding you correctly in how you were how you kind of went about your journey?
Absolutely. And after we have delivered what the platform was supposed to deliver, which is we know what your machine is going on, then it
Yes.
becomes all the other systems abstractions that you need to be able to provide your customer with. So, for example, a lack of lubrication at a paper mill, again, might be absolutely critical because the cost of their downtime is bigger than the cost of replacing the bearing.
Yes.
Not true for food manufacturers. So food manufacturers they were telling us, we went there, looked, it is true, but we're not going to replace it. Too early. Too early, too
Mm,
early. So then how will AI adjust based on sector, parameters, user feedback, and effectively how they want to maintain their machines? Because it's a matter of a preference. We used to say in the beginning, assertiveness, it's a matter of time. Because we were looking and
yeah.
you could tell 12 months ahead when a
Yeah.
machine was going to have a problem, but it would not be timely relevant for the user to go there. Therefore, it would be labeled as false positive, even though our data scientists were like, what? No, this is a failure. It's not a failure for the user. It is not um, it is not at a confidence for them to be able to go there and replace this part, because the cost of replacing the part matters a lot in
Yep.
specific discrete applications.
Got it. Yeah. So yes, there's AI, but then there's the engineering, but there's also the turning that into a customer value proposition that's meaningful to them and not wasting their time, which is very important
Mhm.
there. So, I think you started with machine learning. Can you tell us a little bit about, as the overall aperture is increased in AI itself? You had ML, you had perception, you had prediction, and now you have generative AI. So as you've kind of developed the company and explored all of this, I think you have an amazing set of, I think over 200 engineers at this point in time. But tell us a little bit more, unveil a little bit more about how you're using AI today and what you're exploring.
Yes. Gen AI was a really fantastic outburst that enabled us to do so many things. Because before we were parsing PDFs with OCR and doing all this different data tabling to try to match as well machine specifications with diagnostics. So when you think about closing the loop for your customer, okay, now you have you understand what your machine has, but what is the routine that customer is doing day to day, and how you're
Yep.
actually then going on a productivity level and saving them time. How are
Yep.
they becoming 10x more effective with your product than how they're currently doing? Um, but we're still instilling familiarity in the process. It is very important for real world applications that something is familiar to them. So customers start asking, why is that? And the why is that is a difficult question to answer, but that generative AI can absolutely help us to answer that, because then you go one layer down on that huge asset and you start digesting private knowledge, OEM specifications. If you think about a chiller or an HVAC, this building here has an air conditioner, huge compressor, probably from Johnson Controls, for example. For some manufacturers, it is not the interest of the manufacturer that you're going to have the specification. You know that there is a huge service versus uh, um, 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 capital investment market. Some of the manufacturers, they make more money on the parts and service that they're selling versus selling the actual AC unit for you. So that was also a conflict that we had to go through, which is how do we break that perspective,
Uh huh.
and and in generative AI was the way out to literally have a person's mindset when looking at a data sheet, cross-referencing that with other
Yep.
information to say it is the valve XYZ that is the problem of
Mm-hmm.
misalignment. Replace the valve.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, Igor, because it looks like you guys are like have this dual track approach, which is very obsessed about the customer problem and kind of making it better. You have like lots of problems that you've tried to solve in many different ways. And then Gen AI naturally fit into your AI toolkit because it solved some problems very, very well for the customer. And so do you think about a critical component of anybody building with AI? It seems like you guys are building your own private knowledge over time, which again, private knowledge, domain knowledge that's useful to your customers. So, do you see that as um, others looking at this problem should also actively think about that in parallel, along with the unlocks that Gen AI provides? Certainly, with as the way it comes out of box with public training.
Absolutely. In this rush for gold, Nvidia, OpenAI, they're selling the shovels, right? And the shovels for you to dig in, they are numerous and they
Yes.
are um, um, advantageous depending on application that you want to do, whether it's parsing tables or Excel spreadsheets or PDFs. You're going to use one or another. But I guess it's safe to assume that this is getting more and more commoditized.
Yep.
However, we are not seeing the same velocity to documentation,
Yep.
data labeling, private labeling. When you think about just, again, the promises on autonomous vehicles and why we're not seeing that yet. It's a problem of data. They were not able to train because they had to produce their own data at the same velocity that they were shipping out product. A lot of companies, including Traction, now have to produce our own data, label with the user,
Yep.
create enough volume to make
Yep.
the systems better. So
Right.
if you for the next chapter as well, and how are we going to accelerate this loop, and in because many systems there's no data set that you can train your AI to start with, and
Correct.
then unsupervised learning, it is ineffective. If I tell my customer this has 50% chance of being a lack lubrication and 50% chance of being a misalignment, that is just useless.
Yeah.
So unsupervised versus supervised is still, I think Gen AI had truly unlocked unsupervised world, but has not unlocked supervised learning yet. That's still a big pickle. We've seen accidents on autonomous vehicles still where, if you confuse a sign and if you
Yeah.
do a wrong U-turn and things like that, that will cost you. And, for us would cost a failure, for this company would cost a life even. One of the funny things about introducing AI and how the world is conservative about that is that, well, before, when we come to a factory, let's say they were catching 1 out of 10 unexpected failures.
Yep.
Now they're catching 9 out of 10 unexpected failures. But
Yep.
the 1 out of 10 that they're not catching, it feels worse. It feels
Right.
it is the same thing when you see statistics about car accidents with autonomous vehicle. The scrutiny on one accident versus the 100x more accidents that are happening a year with human drivers versus autonomous drivers. But that one accident that happens without human control, it is augmented in media perspective and everything, because when you lose that control, it's where you lose trust. So we always think about, I still like the word of semi-automated. I still like what other
Mm-hmm.
car companies are doing to do the lane assist, blind
Yeah.
spots, and all of those things. I think the enterprise software world has still a lot of space for lane assist versus
Right.
trying to go fully autonomous, because people still want to be in control of their own fate, and delegating that 100% to your company is very dangerous.
Interesting. So your customers, it's interesting because you started off at the beginning saying that many of your customers that you spoke to, they are relying on things that have been around for decades. There's not lots of startups around. You guys are going in there and giving them something that's pretty amazing out of the box. But the moment they have that experience, they're still like, wait, why is this not perfect?
Absolutely. And you
Yeah.
can't hide the fact that sometimes they will come back to zero. They're like, we have 80%.
Yeah.
Now we're coming back at 0%. And it's a problem of control. It's a problem of perception. It's just a problem how human makes decisions, and
This is,
managers need to find someone to blame. So when the litigious word of AI,
yeah.
and how do you sue an AI decision, it's just very hard. So we are going with the approach, obviously, to, again, it needs to have familiarity. You're
Yeah.
not going to disrupt Photoshop by being Canvas.
Yeah.
When you're selecting something with Photoshop, you need to do the magic hand
Yeah.
that auto selects for that person, but then you confirm with them, is that a head or not? Like, we're identifying for you, but then you have your confirmation. But I think that's where assistants should go, to be honest. Like, everyone's trying to be the crystal ball, and then
Yeah.
they go back a little bit, like, wait a second, like, I still need to unlock all their daily tasks instead of just being that magic hand for them. They still need to be able to personalize and customize and control the way they want. So if AI is saying is a misalignment, they're saying it's not a misalignment, then it's not a misalignment.
Got it. Okay. Now that's very cool. So we've done a little bit of a deep dive into AI and your journey and how you've used AI and how your thinking has progressed. So but there's just not a lot of AI in company without talking about your co-founders teams and how you guys have made decisions. So many of the listeners of our podcasts are also building their own companies. So why don't we start with you have two co-founders. Tell us a little bit about them, how you found them, and any advice you might have as the three of you have kind of worked together, and what in your view is a good co-founding team.
Yes. We have switched hats many times. From co-founders starting at commercial areas, going to product, and then co-founders going to product from commercial and this and that, and vice versa. I think that's a healthy balance. It comes from a place of trust, and Tractian has always been very much action focused. So it's not all companies that are that action focused. Some companies are again founded by founders there that done business administration and not engineering, and they're going to have a different way of operating things. We are operating in the weeds.
Yeah.
For good or for worse, sometimes being so detailed focused as well will have its consequences. Sometimes I realize I am doing balance sheet still and looking at that and categorizing expenses because I want every time of a little bit of the area to be perfect. And then where more other founders would say, yeah, don't reinvent the wheel, and things that are like HR and finance and etc. that all the other companies have. So, but I just cannot help myself not to try to make every area, everything very, very close to perfection. And I have obviously not sure if we found it on complementary mindsets. I think that's a way that other founders will say that, like, I'm a complementary to my co-founder, they're visionary, I'm just executor, or I'm just the external, they are the internal. I think we found on very similar mindset. I think we, to certain extent, we're 90% the same person. I could not think of founding a company of someone that is not almost a duplicate of my thinking and my religion. The same way with a partner, the opposite attracts. I don't think so. My wife is very like-minded as well, and there's very much overlapping interest and things like that. So I'm not sure about that. And that means it's a conflict and fight and so on, but that alignment in where we are going and what we need to do, and then obviously there's going to be preference and details, and that's fine. But as long as the vectors are pointing exactly at the same angle, and then ultimately there's a veto power and so on that you just say very early on, look, we have shared responsibilities, but in an event of that we don't come to any conclusion, I decide. There's no problem with that. I think founders that are not able to do that, there's something wrong there. Like, I have ultimate veto power over every decision and any decision. So you work with a little bit of a veto mindset, meaning
because you don't want it to take forever. You don't want things to take forever. Speed is your friend. Yeah.
So disagree and commit to that sense. Ultimately, that goes for other managers and directors. I think one of the things that I do not tolerate in managers, I think my managers can only have one of the following. They can either identify problems themselves and correct those problems in the course of action, or they need to correct the problems once I identify them, because once I identify them, it's too late for them to identify. But
correct.
Any other combination is just not good for the company. So when I identify the problem and they're battling, that's not a problem. They had their time to think about it. Now there's no way to hide the fact that a company is a hierarchical organism, and that it's not all flowers that everyone's going to agree in the same decision, but you need respect and you need hierarchy, and you need some decisions I am going to decide. I will take my time so that everyone is on board naturally. Naturally, 10% will not be on board, but they need to execute it, and they need to put a smile on their face and just turn the chapter, because I am in the steering wheel here. So
Got
that's
it.
important as to establish, and sort of like not go super romantic on everyone's going to agree and so on and so forth. No, and we'll try to factor in
Yeah,
as
yeah.
much as possible. But at the end, somebody has to make a decision. And you don't want to hear, oh, but that was not my idea. No, 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 no. Once I decide, everyone needs to be on board, right? And then,
Got it.
Bring to me the problems after, and I have no problem changing my mind,
Yeah.
redoing something, going back, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I want that in the company. And but at the end of the day, you're going to hear the same things in across the board, which is, have you talked with customer? Have you watched the user recordings? Where
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you taking that idea from? I like intuitiveness, and I
Mm-hmm.
will sometimes overwrite data with intuitiveness,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the time, find especially qualitative data that will prove that point.
Yeah, yeah.
Quantitative will follow later.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
also utopic to think that you're going to have quantitative data to decide everything. You're not. I
Yeah.
would go qualitative on that.
Just you're saying a gold mine of things. That could how you make decisions, how you expect your team members to make decisions. The little bit contrarian on how you think co-founding teams should come together, and how what's worked for you. I would gold mine. We could dig into a lot of these areas if we had. Maybe that's a completely different podcast. But I do want to ask you one thing about the relationship the personal side of the relationship with your co-founder. I mean, I know you were, for instance, the best man at Gabrielle's wedding.
Yes, yes.
So is that important for you guys? I know you switched roles, you had the same mindset. Sometimes you disagree, but then you have enough of trust to kind of they trust you, you trust them. Tell me about, is that, do you think for other people that personal side is also an important to keep developing that amongst founders, or it has to exist before they start to do this together? What is your perspective on that?
Well, we're not religious on that. I think in our case, we were fortunate enough to, um, have developed a friendship for a while before founding a company together, and knowing already strengths and his weaknesses. Um, so it felt very natural that we should maintain this going forward. However, I think, we had a saying in the beginning of the company: if you talk to Gabriel, if you talk to me, you talk to Gabriel and me. Like, there is no distinction. So there
Yeah,
is
yeah.
no, oh, Igor, I'll tell you something, don't talk with Gabriel. No, automatically he knows. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
already, as you're speaking, I am already
Yeah.
typing to him exactly what you're telling me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So you have a brutal transparency, and you tell that to employees.
Yeah.
And be aware what you say, because it's going to get there and it's going to get
Mhm.
here. Um, it's not perfect. Like, that is the advantage and disadvantage of co-founding companies, is that, um, you know, um, some personal traits you're going to carry forever. So you try to get as better in them as possible, but you also recognize it's us still, right? I think Mark Zuckerberg had written in his book that, like, remember when I went enter a bathroom?
Yeah.
I'm just a Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm just a dude, and I'm just
Yeah, yeah.
the same guy from 10 years from before, So, but we have brutally aligned on personal side on how we wanted to do things. I think that's important, whether you want to hide the fact or not that co-founding a company is marriage,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that is different than terminating an employee. That it's not termination, it's a separation if you want to do
Mhm.
something. And you're always going to see that person one way or another, and you have to then take the kids together on a Saturday or Sunday morning and look at them again. So, like,
Yeah.
just and then, as any marriage, you have to do an effort to maintain and to align. And then again, as any marriage, like, if your wife is a drinker and you're not, or if you're a smoker and they're not, that is going to have those conflicts that you have to sort those out on a personal level. And from everything, like it is, you're micromanaging, and vice versa, the personal side of your co-founder, um, and making sure that you align there on even how to live your life, right? I mean, those unsoftened, unspoken conflicts can kill a company. Like, oh, my co-founder, he goes to party Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm not gonna say anything. You have to make a sacrifice. I mean, how could you
Right.
not?
Right.
And we have done so many sacrifices, and you have put in so many all-nighters, and we have changed so many of our personal behaviors to be better at the company, to
Yeah.
show up with a smile. That goes for alcohol. If we're talking about alcohol, that goes for alcohol. I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I am just not drinking, and I probably sip a thing or two of wine every
Yeah.
6 months. It was not the same when I started the company. I think when I started the company, we were probably every week
Yeah. Yeah.
drinking something. So you changed all that things, and I think it is important to make that change, because otherwise you're saying, look, there is a historical inequality called equity
Yeah.
that we started the company with that, and co-founders have the advantage of just basically defining at start, but you have to earn it. Even though
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have it or not, you have to earn it, and you have to get better, and you have to level up your position for the company, and you have to make the personal sacrifices more than any of your employees. And it is natural that I will tell my employees, hey, you know what? Enjoy your weekend. I'm gonna still be here working. And yes, I am, one way or another, not in cash, but in equity, the highest
Yeah.
paid individual in the company, right? And so the highest should have also the highest level of responsibility. I think that's a natural thing.
Got it. So if I'm thinking about, so you are painting a picture of the founding journey to be more than a complementary business relationship, but it's like it's a commitment to kind of do things together. And if there are things on the personal side that are making each other uncomfortable, you got to kind of work through this and commit to changing some personal situations, circumstances, behaviors as well, because this is kind of like a significant commitment to do together. Great observation, and I think it's great reflection on your part to kind of see that and to kind of incorporate that from the beginning. So let's talk a little bit now about the relationship with customers. And you start your company, you want to build something amazing, you see a lot of things that you want to build, you have conviction. I think you said something like this intuition and conviction that you have, and you want to go do something. At the same time, you are getting feedback from customers. How have you approached balancing like the direction you want to go, like what you see, maybe what you see your customers don't yet see, and maybe there are some customers that are not right for you at the beginning, but they're
Mhm.
giving you a lot of feedback. How do you parse through all of that and kind of chart a course for your company? Because coming out of the gates, the product's not going to be perfect for 100% of your customers.
Absolutely. You have to be aware, extremely aware on customers that will turn you into a consultant or a software house or just a machine of solving their need. Because very early on, when you're building a company, you agree with a customer saying, if that
Yes.
works for you, that works for other people. Do you have that
Yes.
understanding? You have to be clear with that, because the reason you're paying 1/10 of the price is that other people will benefit from that as well. So we have always been extremely transparent with customers. We have said no to customers a lot. We have denied opportunities. That relationship has been a little bit stubborn, even on, we're not going to do this.
Yes.
I understand these are a necessity, but we have not seen yet across the board for other people. At the same time, though, negative feedbacks have always been the greatest source of knowledge. I read basically weekly all the NPS summaries, Net Promoter Score, just basically going through, the lowest score, this and that. Because I go on the weekend and I use the app and I use the platform and I message developers and I go on tickets. I think tickets are your biggest source of learning. One thing is a feature request, the other thing is a bug fix. Bug fix, it has to be solved immediately. Stop everything you're doing. There is no planning, scrum, bullshit. You do it. That's traction. At the same time, though, a couple of things. I have a saying that when customer success support team, when your product fails, they become the product. Important to realize that.
Yeah.
They become the product. You start realizing that your customers do things through them. Ask CS to do X, Y, Z. Ask that account manager to do Y. Why is that not being developed in the product? And then there's another thing as well. There's something called internal tooling. Every company will have their tools company name.
Correct.
The problem with that, though, is that you're saying, I am building something for my support teams to use that
Correct.
customer will not have access to it. And I always challenge that. If it is important for our support team, customers should have access to it. So majority of times, that's 90%.
Or the customer
true.
can't do it, but they have to call the customer support team to get it done. Why is that a good thing? So that's
why is the customer cannot do it? And then you flip the switch. They can do it. Then 10% of the times, they didn't find it or they didn't know how to do it, but they could. They could have done it. And then you educate them. And then support goes and do it for them in front of them. Here is where you have to click to solve that. And here's how you do it. Versus opening a ticket, waiting for something to get better at the platform, and then coming back. So we're religious. We're addicted on the tickets, on reading tickets, on parsing bug fixes. You have to have the right balance as well. That commercial and product, they align. Commercial cannot anticipate too much, and product can also not do too much ahead without validating with sales. And that clock has to be 50-50. Has to be very engined, running at the right velocity. And that's what we have been doing extremely well.
That's good. Excellent. So I know we've covered a lot of topics, but I want to end on what you can share about Tractian. So are there anything that you're doing exciting, product launches, initiatives that you want to talk about or share or give a sneak peek to or unveil to our listeners here?
Absolutely. We are always showcasing our products and educating people through our YouTube channels. And we have a stellar a training page, academy, like the way that you interact with the product, you can get very much early on embedded into Tractian systems without even having traction. Just understand how the experience is going to be and so on. And definitely we are cooking up, something here regarding our monitoring product and just being able to look at the asset health score has been one of the top priorities for the same way that you have a credit score for your financial score. We're now more and more exposing what is happening behind the black box of AI and giving customers and enabling them to have the control to understand it's down 10 points, it's up 10 points because of X, Y, Z. So that whole AI transparency piece has been very huge here.
Amazing. Igor, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you for sharing your story with us, sharing your journey in solving a very interesting problem in kind of like the physical world with AI and how you kind of gone about developing your own AI journey along the way. Also, very interesting ideas about company building, co-founders, and thought leadership, and how you lead a company. So, thank you for the very, very interesting topics. It seems like to build an AI company, a lot of the first principles that you've kind of gone through, and then adding AI on top is kind of really the way you kind of gone about it. So, congratulations on your progress so far, and all the best for your future.
Thank you, Lak. Appreciate it.